So this InterLymph is a consortium of researchers who have all done research in lymphoma, who are all interested in determining the causes of lymphoma. And we get together to really enable us to learn more about the disease that we can't learn in our individual studies. I'm speaking for the lifestyle and environment group. We separate into different factors. There's an immunology group, a genetics group, and my interest has always been the environment and cancer and the environment and lymphoma. And so I've come together with the consortium to try to learn as much as we can about the causes of lymphoma related to the environment and lifestyle. Lymphoma is one of the types of cancer that seems to be most related to environmental factors. We have a lot of evidence that things that workers are exposed to and things in the environment do increase the risk of different kinds of lymphomas. And that is one of the interest in studying lymphoma, because if we can identify occupational and environmental chemicals, actually we can eliminate them from the environment and reduce the incidence of lymphoma in the long term. In terms of lifestyle factors, there hasn't been as much knowledge in the past about lifestyle and lymphoma. Really, it's been difficult to find any of those associations. More recently, we're starting to see similar associations to we see with other cancers, but on a much lower level, like smoking and physical activity. So you, of course, don't want to smoke, and you want to have more physical activity, but that is through the consortium that we've been able to come up with those kind of extra bits of information, because with one study you just don't have the power to be able to identify those. Recently, the most important work we've done in the consortium is what we call the subtype analysis. So for the first time ever, we can actually look at different non-Hodgkin lymphoma subtypes, like diffuse large B-cell follicular, which many people have looked at in the past, but also the smaller subtypes, marginal zone lymphoma, T-cell lymphoma, mantle cell lymphoma, and really ask the question, are the causes different among those different subtypes? And that's really something you can only do within a consortium like this. And what we've found is, yes, there are some similarities with environmental and lifestyle, but there are also differences. For example, smoking doesn't affect every subtype, whereas the environmental factors like pesticides and solvents seem to be more general across the spectrum of subtypes. But again, we only could find this and study it by having this consortium and looking at all these questions. Two things are difficult when you're studying causes. One is rare diseases, because you need to have a lot of subjects in order to make these associations and determine causation. And the other is rare exposures. So something like an occupational exposure that not many people would have, it's very difficult to study. And once again, that's what we have by combining across the consortia to be able to study rarer subtypes and rarer exposures. And that's what's enabled us to identify some of these additional factors that I was mentioning to you. So it's very important to have a consortium like this to study the causes of any cancers, because the more we know about cancer, unfortunately, is that it's more and more different diseases. We know from a treatment point of view that the different subtypes of lymphoma and even different types of breast cancer and other kinds of cancers need to be treated differently and respond differently. But what we've not known until we have consortia like this is, are the causes different as well? And this is enabling us to go into a little more detail and try to look at how the causes differ among the different subtypes. And what this really helps us in two ways. One is we can understand a little more about the causes, we understand more about the biology of the disease too. So we can understand how it develops and understand how these environmental factors actually do increase our risk of the disease. And we combine this with another very important part of InterLymph, which is the genetic susceptibility. And we're trying to identify genes that are related to increase our risk for lymphoma. And that's very exciting, because if we can then identify perhaps certain exposures are only important for people with a certain genetic susceptibility, then we can target prevention. We don't say everybody has to do something, but if you're particularly susceptible to something like a solvent, then that's really important to know. You really want to avoid that substance as much as possible. So I think that's exciting for the future. We're not quite there yet, but we're all hoping to look at the interaction between genetics and environment and lifestyle in order to better tailor prevention messages to the public.